Energy has been in the minds of Connecticut residents for years. With the highest overall energy costs in the nation, it's no wonder that many residents were concerned when working from home sent home energy use through the roof. Now, just 1 week after Tropical Storm Isaias wreaked havoc throughout Connecticut, cutting power across the state, we are bringing on Chris Ramm, the General Manager of Titan Energy, to talk about energy programs and alternative energy sources, and the towns that have already put them into practice. We'd like to thank our new premier sponsor at Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks. Check them out at digitalbackoffice.com or paloaltonetworks.com, as well as our sponsors at Gateway and Housatonic Community Colleges. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments below. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or a member municipal leader. Chris, thanks for being here today.
We appreciate the opportunity to talk with you for sure.
So for those that are unfamiliar with your company, Titan Energy is an energy procurement firm. Can you tell us what energy procurement means?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to. Titan's an independent retail electricity and natural gas procurement firm. Independent, what that really means is that we're supplier neutral. We're focused on the client. We have a number of supply options that we utilize and use, but we are supplier neutral.
So you don't work for UI, you don't work for CLMP or the gas company. You're your own separate thing.
We're proud to call ourselves an energy consultant to our client base, which is significant from coast to coast, actually. And obviously, we're a Connecticut-based company, so a lot of our business here in Connecticut, but we are independent. And so we bring that kind of value to our client base. And, we provide the most value to our clients by delivering and then locking in the most competitive rates from a variety of different nationwide supply options. Okay. And we have a process that we drive that pricing process through. And that, drives that process through all those different supply options and delivers the most competitive rate to our clients. And so this procurement focus is also coupled with a growing ability that we have to deliver, an overall comprehensive energy strategy to our client base. That includes things like on-site generation, solar and cogen, includes turnkey energy efficiency initiatives, includes data management and dashboarding, EV charging stations, and demand response. So we're effectively become, although the procurement process is our cornerstone and has been since about 2001, almost 20 years now. We've developed a number of other very energy concentric mechanisms to help build a strategy for our client base, but we are independent for sure.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you work with a lot of Connecticut businesses, but you also work with Connecticut towns and cities, also organizations in education, healthcare, stuff like that. What similarities are there between municipal energy buying and, for instance, healthcare energy?
Sure. Yeah. Well, across our client base, everybody wants to drive the most value from their energy spend. If you look at a lot of folks, whether it be towns, municipalities, private industry, healthcare, the energy spend budget, the line items that they have are significant. They chew up a lot of their overall budget dollars. So whether it be municipalities or healthcare, finding ways to match smart electricity and natural gas procurement processes, at the same time implementing other measures, whether it be efficiency. Simply put, there's an old saying that, the best way to cut your energy spend is just use less of it. So if you have a smart procurement process, you're implementing turnkey efficiency programs, and then maybe in some ways taking on some control of your own through on-site generation, and then truly being able to understand what that building or that facility that you're working in is doing from an energy perspective. How much is it using? What's the effect on carbon footprint? Making sure that your energy bills are correct, that the data management piece of it. All those things you can do, but those are important whether or not you're a town or municipality, a school system, or whether you're a healthcare facility or frankly a manufacturing facility. You're trying to drive the most value out of that spend on the energy side of things. So it's procurement, it's efficiency, it's on-site generation, it's all those things mesh into a really potent strategy on the energy side of things.
And what do you see that makes the needs of towns and cities different than those other kind of businesses?
Yeah, I think the leadership of any town or municipality or city or school system, they have two things they're at a 30,000 foot level they're probably focused on from an energy perspective. One is they have some some stated sustainability goals, clean energy and reducing the effect on the carbon footprint and so forth. So they have sustainability initiatives they're trying to focus on.
Yeah.
Some of that includes just using less. And of course, the other thing that they have a real responsibility to is reducing their operating costs to their taxpayers, where they reside. So I think it's if I were to look at it broadly, I'd say it's sustainability responsibilities, and then cost and operational cost reduction responsibilities as well. I think the town has to focus on both those things if they're really going to be responsible.
Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about volatility in the marketplace for energy. And Connecticut has certainly felt that in recent months with some price hikes and controversy over that. What causes volatility, and how can you help mitigate that?
Yeah, good question. I think everybody by this point is familiar with the whole role of deregulation in Connecticut. There are a number of states across the country that deregulated both in natural gas and electricity. Connecticut happens to be deregulated in both. And what that really means is the customer has a choice of where to get their supply of either electricity or natural gas. They don't have a choice of how that gas or how that electricity is going to be delivered to their site. But they do have a choice to either use the supply option created by either Eversource or UI on the electricity side, or they can turn to a third-party supplier, which is where a company like Titan comes in. Because what Titan does is, again, through what we think is a very robust and time-tested process, we get to drive the third-party supply base through this process to offer up an alternative of the electricity or natural gas to a customer versus going straight to the utility or straight to the utility. And so the utility, understanding that the utility then is real. The real thrust of the utility is the delivery side of the commodity. Although obviously they can deliver the commodity as well, but the commodity is able to be bought through a third-party mechanism through a company like Titan. The electricity supply rates are established and communicated every 6 months by both Connecticut's utilities, both Eversource and UI. And a key ingredient that goes into this pricing is natural gas, because a good portion of the electricity produced in the Northeast in general, and Connecticut as well, is produced by natural gas-fired plants. So as goes natural gas, so goes electricity pricing. So the fluctuations in natural gas, can be significant. We've seen a high of $4.70 per MMBTU, which is a measurement stick. Now sitting here in August of $1.85 an MMBTU. So therefore, there's a lot of utility in that natural gas, and again, as natural gas goes, so goes electricity. You can mitigate a lot of this volatility by following a process where you're utilizing the services of a company like Titan through CCM and lock in that rate through almost effectively a bidding process, a pricing process where we're driving the town's usage through a third-party supply options, not based on the utility where they're establishing that pricing every 6 months, but instead, we're driving that process through a number of different suppliers. And those suppliers have a lot of different strategies themselves that aren't dependent on every 6 month pricing. And so generally those third-party suppliers are big national firms that have, again, robust strategies themselves that can come in and aren't pricing on a 6 month basis, but have the ability to lock in fixed and variable term contracts for their clients that we then deliver. So those fixed rates can exist anywhere from, say, 6 months all the way to 5 years, depending on where the market's at and how the market is looking, and depending on the client's preference or ability to enter into certain term contracts. Some clients, by their internal rules, can only go 12 months. Some can go much further than that. In a market like right now, where we see that the electricity pricing is fairly low, we have many of our clients are pushing out as far as they can possibly push out because they want to avoid that volatility in the future. The mitigation of volatility is really an important thing for towns and municipalities and in many cases nonprofits that we work with as well, because the budget stability is a really, really important thing. So if you can match a very good competitive market price, which we're watching all the time, based on on natural gas pricing, electric future markets,
Mhm.
then you can take a lot of that volatility out
Yeah.
of play by watching that market and then going into a longer term contract to protect yourself against the volatility of the future.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're riding with utility rates every 6 months, you know they're going to change, and they
Mhm.
do. And so volatility is a hard thing for towns, municipalities, nonprofits, and frankly, any customer. So
Yeah.
we're constantly looking and watching the market every single day.
Yeah.
And so when we start to see opportunities where the market is in a really good place, the future market, we're constantly reaching out to our client base and suggesting that if they have the capability to enact into a longer term contract
Yeah.
and mitigate that volatility, it's really a good thing to do.
To lock it in. You
Lock
mentioned
it in.
before the deregulation. That implies, I guess, that at some point this all was regulated. When did that sort of deregulation stuff happen?
It started, was a little bit different for electricity and natural gas. They
Mhm.
came about being deregulated at different times, but it was in the early 2000s. So
Okay, so that's sort of what precipitated the start of Titan Energy in a lot of ways, because you said you guys started doing this around 2000, 2001?
it did. That's a great question. You know, it really what started to happen is that deregulation was coming about. The two original founders of Titan Energy back in 2001 came from the natural gas industry. They worked for the utility here in Connecticut Natural Gas. They had an abundance of energy experience, market knowledge, and skill sets.
Mhm.
Saw an opportunity with the advent of deregulation and started up Titan Energy way back in 2001. So, you know, we often say that we're one of the largest and oldest energy consultants in the state of Connecticut. And that's why we started right at the beginning of deregulation. That the company was started way back then. Exactly right. Yep. Good question.
Excellent. So saving money on energy costs can be a huge weight off a municipality's budget. You help municipalities find the lowest rates, as we said in the lead. But also, as we've noted before, Connecticut's energy costs are very high as compared to other states. Why are they so high, and how do you find lower rates?
Yeah. Well, you know, as I mentioned before, you know, one of the things that really drives electricity pricing in the Northeast is natural gas. Unlike other parts of the country where maybe a production of electricity is done by other mechanisms, in Connecticut or in the Northeast, about half of all electricity produced is by natural gas fired plants. And so, you know, again, as goes natural gas, so goes electricity pricing. And natural gas, in a way, is constricted about how much you can actually bring into the Northeast based on the infrastructure, the pipelines from where that natural gas is coming from. So the infrastructure itself is somewhat limiting about the natural gas that can come into the state. So as cold weather comes and as hot weather comes, both of which natural gas serves, both in heating and air conditioning, and as the demand, you know, spikes up for both those things, natural gas pricing gets very, very expensive. And so that electricity that's being produced is very, very expensive. So, you know, how do you fix that? Well, you know, you fix that partly by expanding the infrastructure, bringing in more pipelines and whatnot. And I think what we've seen over the years is that's a really long-term, slow, painful process. It's exceptionally expensive to build new infrastructure, as we all know. And also just from the permitting and the licensing and the regulation and the building and the construction of new pipe to bring more gas in is a very long-term process. So the best bet, you know, for a client, you know, given the fact that, you know, that the advent of new infrastructure, new gas pipelines to increase the amount of flow coming through is probably a ways off, you know, probably a long ways off, frankly. Then the best way to do it is to have a smart procurement strategy set up, and CCM has a great process to do that, of which we're proud to be part of. And so procuring your electricity and procuring your natural gas in smart ways where you're keeping an eye on where the market is, you're relying on the skill sets and the knowledge base of a consultant like Titan, looking for low parts in the market where you can push your contracts out and then enter into fixed rates. So what your price is going to be for the term of the contract is a very smart process to follow, is where we can play. Again, you know, the supply base that we work with, which are, again, large, confident, existing supply options, have a national footprint. And so they're developing their strategies based on long-term planning, not every 6-month increments of price changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're able to offer long-term pricing. Again, long-term for us is somewhere between 6 months and 5 years. But they're able to offer long-term pricing strategies based on the fact that that's what they're doing every single day. At the same time, the thought process of again using less through efficiency mechanisms and implementing efficiency strategies. The idea of taking some of the, if you want to call it, responsibility of maybe self-generating on-site generation through solar or cogen. Again, through the use of either PPAs, purchase power agreements, where the town does not have the responsibility of actually buying the solar arrays or the cogen facility. Instead, they've agreed to buy the production from those two assets, either solar or cogen, on a fixed rate for a long-term period, 20 years in some cases, or 25 years. A fixed rate that's significantly lower than what the utility rate will be is another mechanism. So efficiency, on-site generation, smart procurement, and then again, the data management of a specific building, really understanding what's going on inside that building in terms of usage and costs are ways to mitigate the fact that we live in a very high electricity or utility area in the Northeast. There's no getting around that, and there won't be any getting around that for quite some time, unfortunately.
Yeah. You mentioned, some of the longer term things that you work on up to even 25 years. And I know that last year you brokered a 25-year power purchase agreement with the town of Killingly. And it averaged out to a savings of like nearly 45,000 or 450,000, right? A year.
450,000 a year.
Yeah, like over 11 million over the lifespan of that 25 years. Can you talk us through what the process was in this particular case? Kind of give us an idea of like one case study.
So let me. It's a great example. The town of Killing is a great example that you bring up. And first of all, Killing is an active CCM Energy Program member.
Killingly, yeah.
Program. So it was really kind of a good teamwork between CCM and the town, and obviously Titan plays a role in that as CCM's energy consultant. But just as backdrop, the town of Killing uses about 4.2 million kilowatt hours between all their town buildings that they have. Pretty significant load for a town, frankly. It's a pretty good size, 4.2 million kilowatt hours a year. So starting in 2019, Titan started to work with the town officials on two separate strategies that were really linked, though, in the end. One is on-site generation. What could we do from an on-site generation there? And we started looking at solar. And Titan identified 6 sites within the town of Killing-owned properties that could produce about 3.6 million kilowatt hours a year, or about 85% of the total usage for the whole town. So again, the town uses about 4.2 million through a solar project, that would take up to 3.6 million of that. That left still left a portion uncovered. And so what we did is we worked with Killingly and our supply base to do two things. Number one, put in place a short-term contract as we were building the solar array to cover the entire amount needed through traditional supplier mechanisms. And then to modify that agreement so when the solar array kicked in, that the usage was going to go way down, and we worked with our supply base so they understood that the usage was going to go down, and we entered into agreement to cover the remaining usage as well. The beauty of the purchase power agreement, or the PPA, again, is that there are no upfront dollars associated with it or ownership responsibilities associated with the town. So the town was able to implement very long-term fixed pricing, 25 years on the PPA with no escalation factor at all, a fixed rate over the life of the PPA agreement at a rate much lower than what you could potentially get off the wires and poles. And obviously, 100% green energy covering 85% of their usage. And so that they were able to put in that solar array over those buildings, 85% of the town's requirements, a fixed low rate for 25 years. At the same time, marrying that up with the additional requirements that solar array was not going to cover for the town with a good third-party supply contract that we were able to negotiate with our supply partners.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM, sponsored by Digital Back Office and Palo Alto Technologies. Looking ahead a little bit, on your website you talk about helping towns with sustainability goals. And interestingly, according to the Norwich Bulletin, after the 25 years are up, the solar panels will be removed as they're likely to have to replace the roofs of these actual buildings. What can we expect in 25 years in terms of solar panels? They seem to be getting better every year. So when the lifespan of these are up, what do you think is the next step after this?
Well, I think first of all, towns can expect to get some savings right away from when they put the solar panels on. And you're right, technology is ever evolving. It's true in almost any kind of technology, whether it be computers or TVs or anything else. Technology is evolving all the time. What solar panels will look like in 25 years, I think is anybody's guess. We don't have a view on that right now, to be perfectly honest. But we do know, that putting solar panels on a roof or on the ground mounts right now will, in fact, translate to savings for the town of 100% green and renewable energy. I think the most important aspect when a town is thinking about installing a solar array or entering into the solar program is, in fact, the condition of the roof, the size of the roof, any available land that's not going to be used for future development by a town or municipality, and how much of that land is usable for solar development that can then feed clean renewable energy, or how much roof space is available on town's building. I don't think anybody right now has a view that in 25 years solar panels will be I'm sure they'll be made more efficient. I'm sure they'll be made even smaller. Yeah. That is a long ways away from now. And the key is the town can enter into a long-term contract with clean renewable energy at a fixed low rate as we speak. So I think that's the most important thing, to be honest with you. I don't think anybody has a real view at this point what solar panels are going to look like in 25 years. I wish we did, right?
We got to be hopeful. I mean, I guess one of the questions is, like, as someone that works in this field, do you see a point in Connecticut's future where municipalities could be operating on 100% renewable?
Well, I think every town is moving towards that direction where they want to be 100% renewable, and they can do that through a variety of mechanisms. They can do that through solar, and when a company like Titan is out procuring the remainder of the energy they need, they can get that through specifying other solar arrays that have been built in other places to buy that solar power, or wind, or in some cases hydro. So I think there's several mechanisms, including the on-site generation piece with solar, and then through the remaining procurement process. Again, Killing is a great example. 85% of all the requirements are going to be delivered through solar. The remaining 15% certainly can be made up through other renewable sources, and Titan can help there as well, for sure.
That's great. One thing that I think we've all seen popping up throughout Connecticut are charging stations for electric vehicles. And Titan offers electric vehicle charging stations. How long do you see it being before electric vehicles are kind of the main dominant force on the road?
I think there are a couple of things that drive the internal combustion engine, right? And obviously gasoline or diesel fuel is one of those. Right now, we're kind of in a fortunate position. Gasoline and diesel are a little bit cheaper than what we've seen in the past, where I think we bumped $3.50 a gallon, $4 a gallon.
I remember hitting $4 once.
I filled up yesterday. It was a little over $2 a gallon. But I don't think anybody expects that really to last. And in the long term, I think we all expect gasoline prices will in fact go up again. So as long as the gasoline remains expensive, and the repair process of internal combustion engines is expensive on a routine maintenance basis or not routine maintenance basis, there is definitely going to be a drive towards electric cars, for sure. Do we get there in the near term where 100% are electric cars? Again, probably not, to be perfectly honest. But the fact of the matter is, it's a growing trend, and I think people, for two different reasons. I think one is they're tired of volatility in gas pricing. They know that maintaining a reciprocating engine powered car is an expensive way to go, and I think people do have a conscience about moving towards a cleaner way to drive, and electric vehicles are those for sure. Which is one of the reasons why about a year and a half ago we decided to start offering electric vehicle charging stations as part of our, again, energy concentric offering that we do.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the plan saving over the course of the deal or whatever, with some of these, is converting part of the fleet of municipalities to electric vehicles, is that part of the savings that you're looking at?
I think it is. There's a couple of different things that the larger towns and municipalities are transferring over through either electric vehicles, or they're also transferring over to natural gas powered vehicles, which again, are cleaner to operate, not as clean as electric vehicles, obviously, but more and more towns, municipalities, as well as the private sector, are switching over to a different way to drive their vehicles. Again, whether it be electrically charged or on the natural gas powered side.
I think CT Fast Track and some of the state mass transit systems are looking at going with like electric buses and stuff now too.
I think that's exactly right, and so it's a cleaner way to go. And obviously that starts to put, not pressure, but it starts to put some needs into the infrastructure to be able to handle electric vehicles. Electric vehicle charging is certainly a way to do that. And you start to see those popping up more and more, whether it be in garages in the cities where you're parking, or even the local grocery stores and whatnot. You'll see sections of the grocery store parking lot that are made for people pulling in. We have a project going on in the town of Windham right now, where we're working closely with them, where we're building a new community center. That community center is going to have EV charging stations as part of that. So
that's part of the planning process now for new municipal public buildings is EV charging efficiencies. That's starting at the beginning with a lot of these projects now.
It really is, whether they're new projects like this one in Windham I just mentioned, the community center, or existing buildings where obviously you can adapt a EV charging station area for those buildings as well. So certainly something that you're going to see more and more of it as time goes on. And I did want to mention one other thing about the solar portion of what a lot of towns and municipalities are looking at. And when they do enter into a PPA, a purchase power agreement, there's some things that are associated with that are really pluses for the town. One of those is obviously there's no cash that's required to build that solar array. The ownership of that solar array, even though it's on a town building or a town piece of property, is actually owned by somebody else. That's one of the beauties of it.
There's not a big upfront cost for this to the town.
There's no upfront cost because they're ultimately they don't own the array. They're effectively letting you use the rooftop or use their property to put that array there with the stated objective is they're going to sign that purchase power agreement so they can buy all that electricity that's being produced on the site. But the other thing that a town doesn't have to worry about, other than the cash piece of it, and not having to worry about the cash piece, the capital cost of building that infrastructure, is obviously the maintenance associated with that infrastructure, which, even though it's a solar array, there are things that has to be checked on a routine basis and have to be fixed on occasion if they happen to break or wear out. And so they don't worry at all about the maintenance associated with those arrays. That's up to the PPA holder, us. And then the third thing that they don't have to worry about is the actual monitoring. Is it really working or not? There's constantly in the background monitoring and the production rates that are going on off those arrays that we're constantly watching. So the town can focus on what the town is supposed to be doing, bringing services and whatnot to the residents of that town. At the same time, they're getting clean, renewable, cheap, fixed energy that somebody else is constantly doing the watching of, the maintenance of, for a very long period of time on a fixed basis. There's really three key components of why would somebody institute solar. One, it's a low cost, renewable, fixed, and without any of the requirements that generally big capital projects bring in. We handle all that.
So there's really a low risk and a lot of potential gains.
Yeah, there's
for the
very low risk. For sure. And obviously the town and the municipality can always own the array if they wanted to, but the PPA, the purchase power agreement, brings a very good option to a town that's trying to conserve their capital dollars, at the same time want to shift to a green focus with cheaper electricity and on a long-term fixed basis at a significantly lower cost than the traditional methods of delivering that electricity. So it's really a win-win-win.
Yeah. Do you work with any towns that do own their own arrays? Is that part of what you do, or you only do the PPA style?
No, we'll do either way, frankly, whether a town's preference is. And if a town does want to own their own array because of funding they may or dollars they have allocated to that, where they want to own the array themselves and not be contracted into a PPA for a long-term basis, we will certainly do all the same kind of upfront analysis, proposal working, engineering work associated with that for the town. And a lot of that same upfront work is the same whether the town's going to own that array or whether they're going to enter into a PPA with someone like us.
Yeah, so either way, there's ways to help them out with those projects.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Correct.
Well, Chris, thanks for talking with us today about all this. It's fascinating stuff. And, as technology progresses in the future, I'm sure we'll be talking again about the newest, things going on.
Well, we're proud to be part of the CCM team, as the energy consultant there, and we're proud to be a Connecticut-based, for almost 20 years now, energy consultant. So we really appreciate the time this morning as well. Thanks very much.
20 years makes you some of the original people in your field in this particular line of work, right?
Yeah, the one of our co-founders is of the company is still very active with us, and we brought in a very good young aggressive workforce that really developed their skill sets very, very well. And so it's a great little company. We're based right here in downtown Hartford, so we're Connecticut based. We're proud of that.
Excellent. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank our guest, Chris Ramm of Titan Energy. Thanks to our premier sponsors, Digital Back Office Palo Alto Networks, who you can check out at digitalbackoffice.com or paloaltonetworks.com. And our sponsors, Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Learn more at gatewayct.edu and housatonic.edu. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for our CCM chat series on our YouTube page.